Lifestories Live.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another life story coming to you from Lifestories Worldwide. If you need prayer, you need help, then contact us on our hotline, +44 794 355 0287, or go to our website, lifestoriesworldwide.com. You'll find lots of help and encouragement there. Welcome to all our listeners in Ukraine especially, and those from Torch Trust who are listening, and all around the world. We welcome you to this wonderful story going out on Zoom, Facebook, and YouTube live. Tonight, we're going to Brazil. Our guest speaker tonight is Alex Ribeiro. He was a Formula One racing driver in the 70s, the main Brazilian racing driver. And out of his workshop, people like trying to find out Nelson Piquet and Roberto Moreno, their talents came from that workshop in Brasilia. But off the track, Alex has done many things. He's a businessman, a radio announcer, a sports commentator, motivational speaker, mentor, and chaplain. And he has had an influence on athletes in many sports. And Alex has a wonderful story that he's going to share with you tonight. So I'm going to hand over to Alex now in Sao Paulo, Brazil. Thanks, Alex.
It's a pleasure for me to be together with you in this program. And I'm very glad to remember my days from England and motor racing and all sorts of things that the Lord has done through this life of his life in my life. All right. So my story started when I was born into a Christian family back in 1948. My father was a medical doctor with a missionary heart. So he decided to go to the inner part of the country, which was not very well developed at that time. So he was a doctor where doctors were most needed, and he founded churches and he helped a lot of people. When Brazil decided to build up a new capital, the place they chose to build the capital was near how can I say, near where we were living. So my father decided to move to Brazil, and he was the first doctor to come to Brasilia. And when we arrived there was nothing. We see just that city grow up from nothing to a town. So we arrived there in 57, and in April 1960, there was this big party because the capital was ready to be running. So they built the whole city in 3 or 4 years. And to celebrate the inauguration of the capital, there is this big race because Brazilian was born to drive. The streets are not square, and it's very much like a layout of a racing circuit. And I was absolutely fascinated by the race when I watched the race, and I was in love with that. I said, wow, when I grow up, I'm going to be a racing driver. And I was only 11 at that time. And so I started to work and to get the knowledge, what it takes to be a racing driver. And I took it so serious that my Bible was the popular mechanics, the auto sport, and I used to read it, and I used to read everything and to go to workshops and ask thousands of questions to the mechanics until they get fed up with me and said, get out of here, boy. Go away. We have much more things to do than answer your questions. But as I grew up in knowledge, 7 years later, because in Brazil, at that time you couldn't race before you were 18 and have your regular driver's license. So I had to wait for 7 years to put my hands in a car, in a wheel to drive. But I've been practicing without having the driver's license. And but when I was in January 1967, I went to the car show in São Paulo, and I speak to many people there, and I make contacts, and I really knew what it takes to be a racing driver. And the knowledge told me that my dream was an impossible dream, because motor racing is very expensive. You need a car to start with. I didn't have a car. And if I had a car at that time, I didn't have money to put petrol in it. So logically, there is no way to be a racing driver. But knowing God, I proposed a covenant to God. And I told God, if you turn my dream into reality, I promised you there will be a proclaimer of the gospel for the rest of my life. Wherever you send me, I will go. And God answered my prayers very, very quickly and efficiently. In 3 months, he organized a series of factors that allowed myself and 3 other guys, pals. We were racing fans since when we were younger, and we used to race slot cars together. And the 4 of us, we decided to put up a working shop so we could tune up the cars and be very fast on the streets of which would look like a racing track, the streets of Brasilia. So we used to practice illegal racing at night. and
He's coming. Jesus is coming. I can't wait to hear the trumpet call. He's coming. Jesus is coming. And when he comes, we'll crown him Lord of all. And when he comes, we'll crown him Lord of all.
Lifestories Live.
But we didn't have the cars. I used my mother's cars. The other used his father's car. So we were for potential drivers with no cars. And budget zero. With zero budget, we start this workshop in the backyard of the house of the mother of Stika, one of them, one of the 4. And Eladio's father owned a workshop which we didn't work, was out of business. And so he lent us the tools, and we start doing servicing cars of our friends, the friends of our fathers, our prof teachers at the university. And but we want a car. So I prayed for a car. And the Lord answered my prayer in the most bizarre way. My father had a big crash with his Volkswagen Beetle and was in hospital. The first week, we didn't know if he was survive or not. But eventually, when he was able to talk, I went there and asked him for the wreckage of the VW Beetle. And he was unsure, what you're going to do with that? I said, well, I'll try to fix it. But the insurance company said it was a total loss. There was no way to rebuild that. So I ended up with the records of the VW, together with my three pals. We stripped the bodywork off. We managed to fix the chassis. And one day we went we just have a chassis with a seat belt, not to be throwing out of it. And we went to test it. And it was very quick. So we figured out that if we put inside that chassis just the sufficient things to go through the technical scrutineering, we would be very fast. Not because we have a lot of power, but it will be the lightest car in the race. So we built it out of the wreckage. When they throw the parts in the junkyard of the workshops, replaced by new ones with junk parts, we put it together, and we built the most strange thing on top of it to have no project, and we went to race in 4 weeks. So this was the final result. So this was the car with you, and they call it the ugly duckling, because when we appeared on a race circuit with that thing, the crowd went berserk. They laughed a lot. And the races, there was no practice. The places on the grid was defined by draw. And when my number on the grid was the last, 30th in the grid. And I remember the verse of the Bible that says the late ones will be the first. I said, wow, let's go in. I think it's going to happen here. I was hopeful, but the car was a joke. After 6 hours of racing, it was 500 kilometers, but on the streets, the high average speed was not very high. And after 6 hours, we finished second, and the race was a very important race, part of the Brazilian Championship. And we got all the media, TV, radio, and we went from 0 to 100 miles in 1 weekend. So we turned up to be a business, and our workshop was a meeting point for the guys who had blood in their veins, and we grew up from that to be a respectable speed race, speed shop, and from there that backyard workshop produced three Brazilian drivers to Formula One, myself, Moreno, and Piquet, the 3 times world champion. So God is good. When he blesses it, he do it in style. But one thing that made the big difference was the fact that God, although all of this, it was a miracle. It couldn't be, it's inconceivable, normally speaking, that the 4 young guys, I was the oldest with 18, the youngest was Elijah with 16, and to build and to go such far away, humanly speaking, the whole operation was a miracle. And I was so grateful to God that I put a small sticker on the car. Jesus is the only hope. And I put it on a small windscreen. And it was very little, the sticker, just for God to look from above with his magnifier And I would say, thanks, God. Thank you. I'm wonderfully full of gratitude and praise in my heart for making my dream come true. And from there, we evolved. When I grew up from the ugly duckling to
He's coming. Jesus is coming.
Formula Ford, when Formula Ford came to Brazil. And I was, the first year was not very good. The second, I was second in the championship. The third year, I was the champion. And not only that, I was the number one in the ranking of the Brazilians drivers, racing drivers. With that, we got the money, the sponsorship to come to England. But one fact happened there which opened my eyes to what was happening. For me, I just want to race for pleasure, for my pleasure. But when I became champion, and the journalists of the main newspaper of the country came to me and asked, Alex, my chief wants me to interview you. Why Jesus Saves on your car? Why those youngsters that come with the Jesus Saves t-shirts and come to the racing? And why do they, when you get to the podium, they sing a song, Jesus saves, always saves, and people get silent to hear them, and why they put banners, why they give tracks on the speed on the grandstands, why Jesus saves. And then he told me, I don't know anything about religion. Could you write the text for me? I said, wow, okay. So together with Pastor Enes Tonini, my mentor, we put together a piece explaining why and how. Why? Yeah, why? Jesus says because people. Then we present the plan of salvation, the four spiritual laws, and for our punishment that was published in a quarter of a page of the Sunday issue of the newspaper. And I realized that I had preached the gospel to 400,000 readers of that paper, speaking from a pulpit that moved at 200 miles an hour. and I realized that I have a mission on it, and that was to proclaim the word to everybody. So that came like a vision. We believe that we can reach the world for Christ through the universal language of sports. And that was very important for me from that moment on. Immediately in the year after being the number one of the ranking, I moved to England in 1974 to drive Formula 3. And I finished second in the Formula 3 championship. Following year, I did another season in Formula 3 with March. I was second again, vice champion. And 76, I graduated to Formula 2. And although I didn't win races, I was always a front runner, driving for the March BMW official team. And at the end of that year, BMW gave me a trophy for the best BMW driver in Formula 2 at that stage. And I made my debut in Formula 1 at the USA Grand Prix at the end of the season with a Heskett. And that allowed me to do a full season in the next year, which was 77. Then I did a full season in Formula 1, and it was a disaster. All I built in 10 years, I lost in 1 year because the car was so bad and the team was so badly managed, and that was the beginning of the end of my career. The following year, I didn't have sponsors, so I put some of the money, most of the money I earned in 10 years, into a private team, which we call the Jesus Saves Racing Team. And it was myself, Alistair McQueen, who is a brother in Christ, and Alan Docking and Wayne DePayne, the mechanic. And the four of us, we run a team with no big budget, just enough to go from race to race by faith. But my prayer group in England, we have a very strong backup from Reverend Colin G and his wife, which adopt myself and Barbara as their sons and mother spiritually. So we were discipled by them, and we grew up spiritually tremendously, and they fast and pray, and we won a race in Nürburgring, which was a typical race of David against Goliath. It was the race of my life. And after that, we had no more money, had to pack up and come back to Brazil. And I was very frustrated when I had to finish motor racing, got depressed, was mad about God because he allowed me to come down and be a pedestrian instead of a driver. And after some years of in the desert, he moved his in this articulate this situation. I became a farmer, entrepreneur. During my years of desert, I did all sorts of things until one day God brought me back and took me out of my bad mood and changed my life. Gave me another race to race, and I became a missionary, a full-time missionary of a mission called Atletas de Cristo. And with Atletas de Cristo was the best years of my life, where I was the right man at the right place for the job, for the task. And he blessed us so richly. So I started working with high-profile athletes in football, and I discipled some of them. They were picked up for the Brazilian national team, and they invited me to follow them and to give them spiritual help and psychological teachings, and to put in practice what I learned from the pressures of being a top sport performer, and the ups and downs, how sometimes you win, sometimes you lose, the emotional life of a high-profile athlete. It's like a www all the time. How to handle pressure, how to handle fear, how to handle fear of getting hurt, of losing a goal in front of the crowd and be booed by thousands, and how to deal with the sex offers, and so how to handle the press, how to handle so many things that might happen to high-profile athletes, because people look from outside, think that they have no problems. Yes, we all have problems, and the higher is the higher you go, the higher is the responsibility. And I could help them a lot, and they invite me to go with them to their battlefields of a world championship, and I followed them for seven World Cups in football. I went to 5 Olympic Games.
He's coming. Jesus is coming. I can't wait to hear the trumpet call. He's coming. Jesus is coming. And when he comes, we'll crown him Lord of all. And when he comes, we'll crown him Lord of all.
Life Stories.